Hey there, I'm Ben.
Even Real G1 review. Okay, let's start with fit, finish, and physicality. The hardware is really nice. It's so sleek and slim. This is the first time I've owned smart glasses where I could fly under the radar most of the time. I do also love the case. I love the magnetic lid. I love that it charges the glasses. All of this feels extremely premium, although I would say, while premium, these are not very durable. The packaging gives very pointed warnings about handling the glasses carefully. I dislike that there's no place for me to put the clip-on sunglasses. Further, there's no canvas bag to hold any of this stuff. Note that you can put the glasses in the case with the clip-on if you wish. Also, the clip-on glasses are probably more expensive than they should be. The case is kind of bulky. Granted, you can fit it in your pocket, although your friends may be wondering why you're constantly so happy to see them. I have noticed that if I wear these glasses for a full day, they do eventually start to be just a little bit uncomfortable. Just a small dull ache where the arms rest on my ears. It's also kind of weird because the glasses feel super light. Lastly, the buttons behind the ears are not physical buttons. They are just touch sensitive. There are little bumps that show you where to press, which is good design. And I wouldn't mind this design so much if the software was better developed. And given that it's come up, let's just jump into software, shall we? Software. The software gets a 7 out of 10 for me, and I like the look and feel of it, but there are points at which it's really lacking, which I will get into. So, for the dashboard, there's a trigger angle. Basically, if you look up, you see your dashboard. I like that you can customize this to almost any angle. In a way, I do like how simple it is. I would, however, say that the next gen should probably take into account the user's resting head position. I just mean that my resting angle might be much higher if I'm propped up in bed or lying down, meaning that the dash might accidentally get triggered. I think ideally when the trigger happens, the glasses should note the head position when the dashboard times out. I respect the need and desire to keep the software simple, but honestly, features like this would make the product feel more, it just works, instead of I have to keep fiddling with it. Also, I would really love to have the option of adding my now playing to the dashboard. It's one of those pieces of information that I do find myself glancing up for and which I would love to use. Also, there is a battery readout on this display, but I would also love push notifications for when the battery is low. Just a good reminder to have on my phone. And now for the next bit, AI voice notes. This is a fairly well-developed feature, except if the recording fails to activate, the glasses don't tell you why the AI isn't activating. There's no error message, no I'm disconnected, just zero response. As noted, a physical button would at least allow you to know that you've successfully pushed the button. Ideally, there would be some kind of visual feedback tied to button presses, even if nothing else is working. A feedback failsafe. Regarding accuracy, I would say that honestly, it was good enough for me to write my entire review on. I would also point out that always having a device to hand was extremely handy. So handy that I seriously considered keeping the glasses because it would be useful in reviewing other devices. But I didn't do that, and we're going to talk about why. Instead, I've chosen to use the action button on my Apple Watch to replace the functionality that the glasses provided. So, what killed this feature? What made me hate it? The export process. This was objectively terrible. Ultimately, it was the deal breaker for me. Up until this point, the product was very useful to maybe warrant ownership, but holy shit. At the end of the review, I had just under 100 voice notes to export. And guess what? If you want to export all of them, you have to export each of them manually, one by one. Further, it doesn't export the audio. I would have liked to have demonstrated the quality of the mics, but unfortunately, all of that audio is locked inside the app. Also, I checked, there's no desktop or web interface. There's also no option to export both the AI summary and the original note. All you get is a plain text file, and it doesn't even retain the title that the AI gave it in the first place. Good God. On a more unrelated note, sometimes the glasses say they're disconnected, and the random disconnects issue doesn't usually prevent texts from coming through, which makes them a little bit weirder. My guess is that this is because Even Realities uses the term disconnected to mean disconnected from the app, not from the phone, which is a little confusing. As far as I can tell, the only way to get it to fully reconnect is to reopen the Even Realities app. But let's get to the AI. Is it useful? The AI is really poorly integrated into this product. It's a little bit frustrating because it's not integrated to control the device in any way. I can't even check the battery level of the glasses or turn up the brightness. Another area in which this would have been really useful is interacting with the data I've already put on the device, which is stored in the form of a text file. In a perfect world, I would be able to ask it about the things that I had said, the thoughts that I had jotted down that day, but again, there's no integration for this. The AI is one product, and the text-to-speech, voice recorder, and everything else are a completely different product. I do, however, like that they aren't charging a monthly fee for access to the quote-unquote service, even though it's clearly using cloud computing. On the bright side, this thing is pretty good at spitting out tons of data. The answers it gives seem to be fairly hallucination-free, and on that note, I would really love an option that ensures the AI is constantly citing sources and not just spitting it off the dome, because as we know, hallucination has been a recurrent problem. All that said, I didn't test the text generation feature extensively, partly due to the next problem, which is that the glasses will spit out a couple of paragraphs which you can then scroll through. Then the text just disappears and it's gone, it's in the void. There's no way to go back and look at the text which was just generated on my phone or apparently anywhere else. I dislike this because using AI is very energy intensive. This build and destroy approach feels like we're just dumping water down the drain. It's also just bad interface design. What if the AI did really come up with a good fact sheet or a recipe for brownies? How would I save it? The answer is currently you can't. Next, let's talk about navigation and maps. You can only choose to walk or cycle. There are no options for driving, which is probably a good thing because it's quite distracting. There are also, however, no options for public transit, and given that transit would be one of the best use cases for this, I'm very disappointed that they didn't at least try to integrate in this way. Also, I would bet a reasonably large amount of money that the maps data is pulled directly from Google's API, so unless something else is going on, it makes it much weirder that it doesn't support transit directions of any kind. Next, teleprompter. This is a feature which I wish I had gotten to play with a little bit more. Honestly, as a YouTuber, it's one of the only cases which is actually useful and meaningful and interesting to me, aside from the voice notes. I think it's really cool and useful that the teleprompter is capable of hearing what you're saying and scrolling automatically. Some really excellent execution here. It's not perfect, but it works well enough to be useful. Next, let's talk about translation. So I tested these with a Japanese friend of mine, and I would say that like a lot of the features of this device, it's kind of okay. There are some problems here too. Specifically, this is great if you both have glasses like this, but you won't actually be able to communicate unless you have these glasses or something like them. And even then, although they are capable of doing a kind of base level translation in real time, the reality here is that the AI is just not advanced enough to truly translate in the way that a human would. But you might catch someone talking shit about you. I also like that they offer a free translation tier as well as a paid translation tier, although I would say I didn't notice a huge difference between the two of them. Just a little sidebar that if you like subtitles and you have a speaker who speaks fairly clearly, you can actually change the translation from English to English, and it will just generate subtitles live while you're listening to someone talk. It's kind of cool. Next, let's talk about the battery. Obviously, depending on your settings, battery performance will vary, but I found the battery was sufficient for all-day use even when I was using maximum screen brightness. I think I could stretch it to up to 2 days, but given that they go into the charging case at the end of every day anyway, it feels like a bit of a moot point. Next, ethics and environment. Even Realities gets a fail for this one. For a company as pretentious and which really seems to have put on its big boy pants, the lack of professionality and transparency here is pretty terrible. There is no mention of working conditions and no external audits. There's no mention of stewardship or even awareness of environmental impact. There's no product recycling or circular supply chain. There's also no mention of addressing the deeply negative energy consumption impacts of the AI model that they're clearly running many instances of. And lastly, no transparency around which LLM they're using or whether or not it was developed ethically. Although based on the amount of intellectual property theft that went on in the training of most models, I gotta wonder if there are any which have been created using data which was given consensually for that purpose. Summary, I really love the simplicity of this device. The display is so low profile and futuristic that I genuinely wondered if it was real. The Apples and Googles of the world are trying to deliver a very bloated experience that delivers every feature ever, and even Realities isn't doing that. They're trying to provide some really valuable, useful information in an elegant, lightweight heads-up display. Obviously, I had notes, but the hardware is really fantastic. And that gives me hope for the company because software can be updated. But holy shit, I really can't express how much I dislike the way all of my notes and audio recordings are just trapped in their app. Should you buy this? Well, if you need a good teleprompter and you've got just over 700 smackaroos lying around, maybe this is good for you. This era is really frustrating because so many of the AI products that come to market lately have been like this. Some really decent hardware with some incredibly lukewarm, undercooked software. I don't think even early adopters should buy this unless you're okay with the caveats I've mentioned. But rest assured, when Gen 2 comes out, I will be right there testing it. Because all in all, this is one of the best AR headsets I've ever used, which means you'll know when it's time to buy if you subscribe. It's the little button that says subscribe. It's here. Let me just probably at the bottom. Sometimes they do software updates, but normally it says subscribe. Yeah, just yeah. Push the button. Push the fucking button.